You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hello and welcome back to another week of the Cabral Concept. Today is Mindset and Motivation Monday, and I'm Stephen Cabral, board-certified naturopathic doctor, and today we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of people like to shy away from, and that is because we're always talking about, okay, what books do we read? What podcasts do we listen to? What philosophies and gurus do we want to cite? And sometimes that's where it stops, and that's what I take issue with, and that's kind of like, I know it's, yes, I'm talking about the same exact things, and I write books, and there's a lot of people out there, because that's the foundation, right? That's the starting point. But what do you do with those books? What do you do with those podcasts? What do you do with those seminars and events? Do you end up implementing that information? And that's what today is all about, because at some point, you've read enough books, you've talked to enough coaches, you've listened to enough podcasts, you know what you need to do to get started, and you have to get started. And that's kind of my big takeaway today is this, is that at some point in your life, you have to pull that trigger. And pulling the trigger means getting started, even though you know you're not going to be 100% perfect. A lot of times we wait for ourselves to feel like we're 110% ready. That like we couldn't possibly know any more or be any more to get started. And that's an issue. I mean, it really is, because you will never know everything there is that you need to know in order to get moving forward. I know myself, like, I grew up really a perfectionist. I mean, it would really annoy me if I didn't do things right down to that last little percentile. But now, it's just been a work in progress. I understand that in order to move forward, I'm going to have to be imperfect in the very beginning. I knew even just starting this podcast, there's going to be a lot of things that I didn't know. But I didn't want that to stop me from being able to get out the information that I feel that I know that could help other people. And we're just starting it, right? We're only 6 weeks, 7 weeks into the podcast, and already I feel like it's moving in that better direction. And the same goes for myself and I'll just use myself as an example, when I first started to do sprint triathlons. I hired coaches, I read books, I listened to audio, I did all of these things to say, how can I swim better? How can I bike better? How can I run better? How can I do my transitions better? What are the tips? What are the tricks? What are the time-saving things that a coach can give me? But I knew at some point I had to actually do an event. You know, I'll probably talk about sprint triathlons in the future. I think it's a really fun thing. It's about an hour to an hour and a half of work for most people, and I don't think that's overkill for the body for training-wise. And it can also be motivational, and it's fun. Like, I love gear, I love gadgets, I love tech stuff, and there's a lot of that stuff that does go into triathlon-based training. Now, Ironman triathlons are a totally different story. Events that take 8 hours, 13 hours, the entire day for some people. And of course, yeah, if you know me, if you want to check that off your bucket list, fine. But I work with so many Ironman-based triathletes and a lot of triathletes in general, and I have to look at their cortisol levels, look at their hormone levels, look at all those things, and they've just taken it too far. You know, they're really depleting their body. And from an anti-aging perspective, I can't recommend it. I just can't, because I've seen the labs, I see what it does to the body. And the training is basically what takes that, because it's hours a day of training. Okay, let's get back on topic. So for you, it could be, well, starting a nutrition plan. And when you start the nutrition plan, are you going to know everything? No. Will you slip up and eat a food you're not supposed to? Yes, like that's going to happen. A lot of my wellness clients are like, well, can I have this? Can I have that? I said, get started. Here's your plan. Here's your shopping list. Let's move forward. If you mess up a little bit, that's okay, because you're doing 95% of things correctly. That 5%, we're just going to adjust. If you made a mistake, if you went out with friends, if you slipped up, okay, get right back on the wagon, get started again. Same for an exercise program. Like, what if you do an exercise you're not supposed to? Well, stop if you ever think that it's going to hurt you. of course, right? So if you're doing something that is with a barbell or something like that, that gives you the potential of putting yourself at risk, but could also be great, stop if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, but do something. Like you've heard me talk about before, don't use machines, use more free weights or body weight or whatever it might be in general, yes. But if all you know how to do are use machines and use them correctly, well then do that. Move forward, that's a first step. So do I believe that you should not keep listening to podcasts, reading books, hiring coaches, all of those things? No, you should absolutely do that, because just like myself, it's always taking things to that next level. No matter where you're at, there's always more to learn. That's why people ask me, why do you read, 2, 3, 4, 5 books a week? When you've accumulated this knowledge over the course of a couple decades, it's because there's always more. There's always more to learn. There's always subtleties within each one of those things where I can get better. And same with you. And that means no matter how much you know about nutrition, do you know about salicylates? Do you know about histamines? Do you know about FODMAPs? Do you know about nightshades? Do you know about all of these specific things? Do you know about food combining? So it's like there's so many things that you can look into. You don't have to get overwhelmed. It's just saying, this is where I'm going to progress to. Knowing that you don't have to be perfect in order to get started, but you do have to start moving forward. So do not stop with the podcast. Do not stop with the books. Do not stop with the coaches. Do not stop with anyone that you want to speak to, because that's only going to move you further on your path. Just don't let it stop you from getting started. Don't say, okay, well, I'm going to a seminar in 2 months from now. After that, I'll get started. No. Do something today. Do something tomorrow. Get started this upcoming Monday. Move forward, mess up, recalibrate. Move forward, mess up, recalibrate. That's how life works, right? That's the way it is. Hopefully that does motivate you. Hopefully does put you in the right mindset to know where I come from, where I try to shift my clients towards understanding that you are not perfect. You will never be perfect. I'm sorry to say that, but you are good enough, and that is good enough to get started. And getting started is enough then to take you that next level and next level and next level. And through the course of weeks and months and then years, you won't even recognize the person you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Trust me on that. I see it every single day in my practice. Please put this into your own practice and your own life. I'll be back real soon with more episodes on the Cabral concept.
I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.